Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Ground Zero. Today I'm joined by Trisha, and today we're going to be talking about first time networking and navigating the business space. Do you want to start by telling us a bit about yourself, Trisha?
Yeah, I won't go on though because I'm very old, Ben. That's why I usually say so. So you don't want my
Uh,
life story at this point. But I have been on this unsquashing mission, which I think is the relevant part to all this. So I've got a mixed career, very portfolio career,
mhm,
um, and a lot of it was nothing to do with the business world. I started off, I think, an art school. I went to retail. I hated that. I wasn't very focused on my career, actually, Ben, to be honest.
mm,
But one thing that was consistent for quite a long time was work I did in the theatre as an actor, speaker, and that kind of knocked on to me working with people with dementia, doing reminiscence work with them, and then that knocked on to me being a funeral celebrant. So you've got the general picture. The overriding, I suppose, umbrella on all of this is communication,
mhm,
and that is why about 7 years ago or 8 years now, I set up as a communication coach. Well, that's what I called myself in the early days, but that's another story because I've been on a journey, because that was basically
mhm,
me entering the business world. So although I'm old and got all this various life experience and work experience, in many ways I'm still comparatively new in terms of the business world. So I'm not a million miles away from people starting off.
mm. So, do you want to tell us about your first time going from your previous section of life where you weren't in the business world to actually coming in and actually going, oh, I need to network?
Yes, it was horrific, quite traumatic actually, being taken back to this moment. I was weird about the business world. I talk about, but this is my baggage, okay, and I
Mhm,
and I use a little expression when I'm talking about things that hold us back, and I say the fibs that hold us back, which
mhm,
stands for fears, illusions, and baggage, which I think is quite a handy little memory nudger, because humans, we're all going to have this stuff going on. So
mhm,
one of my baggage things, I think, was that my father, bearing in mind I was born in the 50s, Ben, I just think I should put that out there. My father was an extremely successful businessman, worked his way up, I'd like to say,
mhm,
but ended up in a very high up position. My mother was a very, I feel, quite a sad and frustrated, very beautiful housewife. So a little bit stereotypical of that image of the 50s and 60s. And I, of course, was there in the middle as the child. And I think I sort of reacted a bit and maybe rebelled a bit. So to me, the business world I associated with something rather cold and evil,
mhm.
because I thought, oh, this is the world my father inhabited. I never really saw him. He traveled a lot. You can't be a business person and and still be a whole person, and etc. Blah blah blah. So for me to enter it, albeit in a very low key way, setting up as a communication coach, I was trying to slay a bit of a demon. I was rapidly approaching 60 at the time, so it was a sort of bit of a landmark thing. I thought, let's do this.
Mhm.
I had the credentials. Everything I'd done up to then sort of set me up to be able to help people with communication, and confidence and stuff. But from my personal point of view, when I entered this world and realized that I actually had to sell myself, it
Mm.
was a nightmare, because a lot of what I got established in beforehand was word of mouth stuff, and there was no
Yeah.
marketing involved. So, okay, right, I actually have to let people know what I do and that I'm here. And so I joined a sort of peer group thing, and I immediately got weirded out by that because people were talking in a certain way, and I thought, oh, I don't know how to talk like this. This is really foreign to me. And then I joined a networking group or two. And the actual first one I went to, I remember just sort of going in sort of fairly normal-ish as me, and then thinking, well, that didn't work. I'm invisible. And
Hmm.
then I decided, as an actor, I thought, I know, act, Trisha, and act fast. So I went into the next one as a totally over-the-top version of a business person. So I power dressed and I was power posing, thrusting my business card into people's hands. Came away from that thinking, well, that didn't work. That was yuck. I mean, that was so not me. What is going on? Joined a big networking group, lovely people, everyone was friendly, you know, over breakfast, you do your 2-minute pitch, you hand your card around. And I did this for about 2 years. And every time I came away feeling really down and really like, oh, I survived. I'm not
Mm.
thriving. This is what is going on. And there was a certain point where I thought, this isn't right. Something's not working. Somebody that knew me well enough, that was in the sort of business mentoring world, said, Trisha, you're going to the wrong places. You're not a suited and booted kind of person. This is not your thing. Go and see this group. And it happened to be a group called You Are the Media, who had these lunch clubs and Mark Masters, and it was right near the beginning of the lunch clubs. And I waltzed into this space expecting the same old, oh, I've got to have my business card out, I've got to do this pitch. And no, none of it, none of it, none of it, no. Just people, being different people, humans, not really blabbering on too much about the business, just
Hmm.
getting to know each other. Oh, it was such a relief. So that was when I started to unravel this whole sort of self-squashing thing that I was doing, because I finally realized, oh, I can be in the business world and still be a version of me that feels reasonably aligned with who I think I am. And I
Mm.
don't need to be XYZ. I don't have to do XYZ, etc. So to cut a long story short, that was the start of my adventures. But there's many tips I can now obviously give as a result of my own experience and talking to loads of people that I've worked with who've had very similar stories.
Mm.
Very similar.
No, You're the Media's good. The last one was the first lunch club where I so nearly avoided the call out of Mark. Because the first one, he made me talk out all about this podcast in front of everyone. Then this one, I thought, first lunch club, I can sit back, just talk to people, be out the limelight. He's like, and Ben's just passed his apprenticeship. I'm like, you've really had to do that. I was this close to having an out the spotlight lunch club. No,
He's just so genuinely supportive. It's not an act, it's nothing.
no.
It's just he just desperately wants people to be able to share. And that's such a different approach to the, or it's almost like you would, I almost feel like people were trying to catch you out when I was in that round the table breakfast, do your 2-minute. But literally, people were sat with
Mm,
you had a leader on the table and they sat with their watch and they literally timed you down. Oh my crikey. I mean, how relaxing is that? Yeah, no, not at
yeah,
all.
'cause
And if you're not a salesy type,
mm,
which I'm so not, it's the worst possible thing, because you think, okay, I've got to come across as memorable. I've got to give some interesting information. I've got to do something, but I don't want to come across as salesy, but I've only got 2 minutes. And so you've
mm.
sort of done this kind of rapport building thing, and then your time's up. And so nobody knows what you do. It
Because
was horrible.
what I love about it is it's a complete different approach from normal networking. You get a set time. In that time, you've got to pitch whatever you want, and from there, you've got to get people that you've never met in your life to buy into you completely. Whereas here, it's you can sit back, talk to people, and from there, they all gather around you naturally anyway, which I find is a
Exactly.
lot better.
It's
Because
human.
I don't want to. I want to go. Hey, everyone! I've got this podcast to talk about this, that, that, that. Come watch it. No, I can talk to them, get to know them, and then later on, like, okay, I do this. What do you do? How can I help you as well?
Oh, you're so right. You're so right. And that's this thing about And it's funny because I'd already gone through a journey to do with general socializing with strangers, because that in itself is just a thing. And
Yeah.
people might think, oh, you come across as really confident, Trisha, but actually, I've always really struggled with some elements of all of this, and acute self-consciousness from when I was really young. And I when I did the, let's just call it after dinner speaking,
Hmm.
I was fine with the bit that most people would be scared stiff of, which was the entertainment part, me up on a stage doing my thing, but really felt uncomfortable sitting around the dinner table making conversation. So,
Hmm.
ah, so it's like when I had a role, I was kind of okay because that's right, that's my thing, that's what I do. So I had to figure that one out as well. And you just then talking about asking people what they do and all the rest of it. This was the big moment of light bulb for me when I realized,
Mm.
just ask questions.
Yeah.
Just ask questions. It's brilliant.
Because it doesn't even have to be like what you do. It's like it could be like, what do you like doing outside of business? Like on Friday, they go for a dip in the sea, which I will not do for an absolute while until probably summer because I hate the cold. But it's like that every Friday, even through winter. They just go, they dip in the sea, they have a talk. And it's just that
Exactly.
community-based thing which what makes it work.
And that's what makes people get to know you. And that's what makes people then recommend you to somebody
Mm,
when somebody's saying, oh, do you know somebody who can do it? You know, they don't remember your 2-minute pitch and your business card. The business card's in the bin. Your 2-minute pitch wasn't memorable. And because they were too busy thinking about their own 2-minute pitch to listen to yours anyway, because that's what happens in
mm.
communication generally. So this way, people say, oh, yeah, she's the one that, or he's the one, and it's got nothing necessarily to do with work.
From what
It's
I've gathered from my experience, it's networking events typically are, it is a network event. You go there, you talk to people. Whereas you are the media, it's like a continuous one. Like even outside of a complete event, we message each other and we arrange this interview. It's
exactly.
not like we did it
Exactly.
at an event at lunch club. It was actually just off the ball one evening we messaged.
I love it. It's absolutely that. And yeah, and just finding and talking about stuff that there's this great trick when you know when you sometimes get into conversation and you feel a bit awkward and you think, gosh, this is a really boring conversation and I don't
Mm,
know what to do and I don't know what to say and I've got nothing interesting to say. There is this lovely thing I talk about, okay, go in with your detective mindset. And
mm,
I've got a bit of a theme to do with detectives, and my book is, yes, Investigator Lewis is the sort of main character in it, and I've got a hat and everything, which I'm not wearing currently. But anyway, go in with this mindset because um, what happens then is you're listening and it all feels a bit boring. You ask a couple of questions, something a little bit more interesting or something that you feel you can connect with comes up, and then before you know what's happened, you can then respond a bit to that thing.
yeah.
Maybe it's somewhere that they used to live. Oh my gosh, I used to live about 2 miles away from there. No, you're kidding. Yeah, do you remember the such and such disco when I was there? Oh my God, I used it. And all of a sudden, you're into a much more interesting conversation. But you only get there by listening and then quite sneakily, slightly directing the conversation
Mm.
towards something beyond the, oh, what do you do? Oh, yeah, what's the name of your company? How long have you been doing that? Have you got any client? All of that stuff, which frankly is boring. Yeah.
Mm. So if someone was going into their first networking event, you know, they they might be really young, let's say, I don't know, 16 going in, or they might be, like you said, the age that you went in quite, but their first time, what advice would you give them going into such a big event and they might be a bit, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I even want to go.
Yes. Well, that's very understandable. So I would treat it almost as a sort of a detective mystery, as a game, as a challenge. So, in other words, you can't necessarily think, if I don't feel great and if I don't feel utterly motivated to go to this thing, then I don't want to go because there's something. You will expect to feel a bit of resistance.
Mm,
So that's number one. Accept the fact you're feeling resistant. And it's a bit like I've taken up climbing recently, and it's a bit like me looking at a route in a climbing wall and thinking, oh, I don't know, that's not, I can't. And then the different approach being, yay, this is beyond my comfort zone slightly. Let's see how far up I can get. Let's
Hmm.
just challenge myself to do those first few holds or whatever. So that's number one. Don't deny the fact that you're not really looking forward to it. Say, okay, I'm not, but it's a challenge, it's an adventure. Let's go in with that mindset. Number two, do prep your body. No, God, that sounded so weird. Okay, let me explain, Ben. Don't panic. Okay. I don't mean oil yourself up, because that would be odd, really, for a networking
Yeah.
event. I mean, do whatever makes you feel more you and more relaxed. So whether you want to go and do a bit of a dance around the car park, or sing, or think of something very childish, or just go into the loos and practice smiling, properly smiling and almost laughing at yourself. So you actually send your brain the message that you are not in danger. I
Mm.
know it sounds weird, but that our brains aren't picking up the subtleties of things. They're just picking up basic messages. And if you're tense, they think you're in danger and there's a saber-toothed tiger coming for you. So they put you into fight and flight and fright mode and all that stuff. So just try and get as relaxed as possible and loosen up. And then go in with this adventure mindset. It's a challenge. Let's see how far I can get. How many climbs can I do? And be really straightforward, because okay, there's this thing. Okay, there are two things I just want to mention which are a bit geeky, Ben,
Hmm.
if that's all right.
No, that's fine. Go for it.
One of them, and I actually mentioned one of them in my TEDx talk. Just drop that in there again. So one of them is called the liking gap. Liking, as in I like you, you like me. The liking gap, and it's research done by Erica Boothby, and it's this thing whereby we sometimes will meet up with somebody we don't know that well, and we'll have coffee and we'll come away and think, they probably won't want another meet up. I don't think I was their type.
Hmm.
I don't think they particularly like me or anything. And they've gone away potentially thinking exactly the same thing. And so you don't arrange. And then a week later, you phone, you get a phone because, oh, let's meet up again. Because, I really want to get to know you more. That was such good fun. And you think, oh, you could have knocked me over with a feather. But it's nothing they did. It's just some weird trick that we do to
Hmm.
ourselves. So number one, don't think you can read people's minds. So if you see people in there and you go into this odd place where you think, oh, they don't like me, I'm not out of place, remember that you're probably doing this to yourself, that you're misreading people's facial expressions, that you're just creating a whole script that just doesn't exist in reality.
Hmm.
Number two, there's a thing called the spotlight effect, which actually is what it says on the tin. So it's people think that they are way more the center of attention than they actually are in
Hmm.
these
The
situations.
main character person.
You know that feeling, don't you?
Yeah.
You just think, oh, spotlight. I've just walked into this room. Everybody's looking at me. No, they're
First
not.
lunch club. But
Exactly.
but they actually were, because I was the only one standing up talking.
Now, there is obviously, if you do stand up on stage and there is a spotlight, that is technically what is happening. But even then, every little thing about you is not being noticed in the way that you think it is. And this is just human stuff.
Mm.
It goes back to survival stuff and all the rest of it, and not wanting to be thrown out of the tribe, and all those wonderful human brain things. So remember that there's various things going on that you are doing to yourself, and you might just dissect that a bit when you come away. So that's the other thing. So once you're there, go into this detective mindset, decide you're going to find out as much as possible about people,
Hmm.
and be okay about doing what feels to you like a weird thing, but will be weirdly welcomed by just about everybody. And if it isn't, it's that person's problem, not yours, which is go up to a group and say, here I am. with a lovely, warm, approachable smile. So say, I feel really awkward. I'm not used to this networking thing. Help me, or something like that. Whatever your natural style is. I mean, I'm not saying say those exact words, but something that feels, or if you're a very quiet, I'll role play being a quiet person now, Ben. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, this isn't going to be easy. Okay. I mean, what I do is I tend to, when I'm feeling awkward, I will probably go up to the, oh, fire engine, up to the other extreme, and go hyper. So we
Hmm.
all have our weird ways, our individual ways, I
Yeah.
should say, of reacting. But if I was a quieter person and I'm being tempted to hold back and stand over by the coffee urn and or possibly go to the loo, then I'm going to wander up and find somebody else maybe that looks like they're a quiet person, and say something like, "Ah, I always feel a little bit tricky at these. I haven't been to many of these, and I don't like interrupting people's conversations. Can can I slightly interrupt yours?" Or something like that. And just people love it. And this is the weird thing. We think people are going to hate us being anywhere near something that they feel is interrupting them, but actually they could desperately want to get out of their conversation or the group they're in, and you could be a breath of fresh air. And people are way more supportive than we give
Mm.
them credit for. So just be prepared. Don't think you've got to go in with some spiel.
Mm.
Just go in with some really bulk standard basic bit of honesty.
Mm. And I'd probably add in there, if you can, probably just chuck yourself in the deep end. Because I found by obviously Mark putting me in talking up front, I'm now that annoying guy that as soon as you come in, like, hey everyone, how are you? I know you, I know you, and I know you.
Yeah, go. Yeah, I mean, there is. It's again, I come back to the climbing thing or the acting thing. You know, when I was I ended up acting professionally, but when I started, I mean, there was a starting point. There's always a starting point. This is what
Yeah.
your podcast is all about. You know, and I did, you know, so had I not thought, okay, I will step onto this stage, I will take this part with 3 lines to say in the middle of this
Hmm.
play. Had I not done that, I would never have had the adventure, you know. And it's always uncomfortable and difficult.
Mm.
But I suppose my big thing is, if you keep coming away with a feeling that I was in these early days of, I need to lie down, I feel really de-energized and kind of misaligned. I feel
Hmm.
almost like I've betrayed myself, you know, something's wrong. If you be self-aware, because if that happens a few times, you might say to yourself, what's going on? Am I not in the right group? Is this just not my scene, really? I've
Mm.
tried, but let's look around and see what else is out there, because we're all different. And one person's perfect networking group is another person's
Yeah,
living nightmare.
absolutely. So obviously with networking, as we probably both experience, it's not all ups and rainbows everywhere. So from what you haven't covered, what do you say are some low points? And any advice on maybe how to make them better or just avoid them as a whole?
Avoidance is obviously a very easy way out, but not very good for growth, personal growth and opportunity growth, is it? So
Mm.
I think we do have to, I was going to say, grasp the nettle by the horn, but I think that's an absolute mixed thing that doesn't work. Grasp the bull by the horn, grasp the nettle. Thank you. Thank you. So we got to go for it. So don't know. I think avoiding is impossible if you want to grow your network. I mean, yeah. And also, I would say, if you can, try and deliberately force yourself to go to in-person events, because they are very different to Zoom screens, and it's easier to hide. And I just don't think the energy is difficult to get on a
Mm.
virtual situation. So find somebody nice to go with. That would be a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, find a friend. phone a friend, say, come on, should we do this together? Yeah, I'm equally not into this. Okay, great. We can equally be not into it and go.
Hmm.
And you then, I would suggest the tips we talked about, but look upon it as not as a sort of, I've got to do this because apparently this is what you have to do, but more a sort of, this is interesting. This is
I want to
something
do
I've not
this.
really done. Yeah, let's see what happens.
Hmm.
Then it's almost like, a childlike sort of quality to it of discovery.
Hmm. So, other than what you've already mentioned, is there any tips that you have in the back in terms of going to network events and finding, okay, this is actually where I belong?
Yeah, I think it's like um you get a certain sense when you come away, even down to, I know this sounds like a really frivolous thing, but it's not. I mentioned power dressing,
Hmm.
and so what you wear does kind of, it is part of what's going on, because what you ideally want is to be in a place where you feel you can wear what you feel comfortable wearing. I mean, there are certain rules. You really do need to wear clean clothes that don't smell, and not offensive t-shirts until you get to know people's sense of humor, or there are obvious things that you are going to do in terms of
Hmm.
impression management, but as close as relaxed you state as you can be, that's where, and if that feels great when you walk into that space and you don't if you don't look around and see everybody else is wearing a suit, or everybody else, there was a phase where business women all wore sort of, I don't know, kind of shaped dresses with flowers on and matching shoes or something. I
Hmm.
look, that's not, which are lovely if that is your thing. This is what
Hmm.
I'm saying. I'm not saying that's wrong and I'm right, but I say in my book, which I'm just going to hold up now, I say, I give a story. They're all quite funny sort of stories, but based on real things that can happen. But I don't know about, when I'm in a dress, I feel like a man in drag, basically, which was something I came up with once when I was trying to explain something about how uncomfortable I felt in a certain environment with, it was a sort of women's networking group, and I thought, I don't wear dresses. I just don't wear dresses. I mean, that's just my thing. And so to put something on because you think it's a uniform that you need to be able to somehow conform to this place you're in might be a clue that you're not in the right place.
Hmm.
That's a completely random, slightly off thingy tip, but it's based on, yeah, experience.
Well, I'd say one of the final questions that I have is if someone's looking to go into networks, they've listened to this, they've gone, okay, I want to give this a go. Where can they find them? Because obviously you got your other media, but then they may be, let's say, I don't know, up in near Manchester or a different country and not be able to come down to Poole to go to all these
Okay.
events.
I have always found, now I suppose this is going to be Marmite for some people, but I've always found LinkedIn to be an extremely
Yeah.
useful source, because, but there again, you don't want to just go onto LinkedIn and look up networking events as such necessarily. You can give it a go, but the way in really is to use LinkedIn as I think it should be used, which is building relationships and getting to know a really great
Li
people that
LinkedIn's basically a network event itself. You go,
yes,
you meet new people.
absolutely, it is exactly. And within that, you're going to come across people who run networking clubs, or go to
Yep.
them and invite you as a guest. That, to be honest, is a way better way in. The other way is, you go on Eventbrite and you just
Yeah.
take luck, but it's that's more scary. I think this softly approach, if you can, through using LinkedIn, as you just beautifully put it, which is in itself a networking event, if you use it properly, not as a sales spammy thing.
Yeah. And I've personally run out of questions to ask. So if the people do have questions, where can they find you? Is there any? Obviously, you got your podcast and book. Do you want to
Yeah. Oh
showcase
yeah,
those?
let me be salesy
Go
then,
on, be
because
your
yeah, it's my
salesy.
thing.
Go on,
Yeah.
I'll just
Um
drop out here.
yeah, I'll just go and get tower dressed. No, okay, so trishalewis.com, and it's spelled S-H-A, so Trisha, trishalewis.com, my website. There's a page on there which has got, I think it says Unsquashing Mission or something like that, but it's got the links to my book, the TEDx, and my podcast, which is called
Mhm.
Self Belief Unsquashed. Really, if you put Trisha and Unsquashed in Google, I think you'd probably come up with quite a lot of my stuff. So, job done.
Well, that was quick. So yeah, so you can go find Trisha on LinkedIn. She's got her own website. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer any questions. But
Yeah,
on my end, that's all I've got. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Trisha. Unless you want to add anything,
I think I've said more than enough, Ben, to be honest.
maybe
I
we'll do more parts in the future.
part two, part three, part four. Yeah, My Life by Trisha Lewis. Yeah, well, I was born in yeah. Anyway, thank you, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure and great podcast. Keep going with it. It's fabulous.
Thank you. Anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye bye.